Hello, and you're very welcome along to another episode of the Gaelic Statsman podcast. I'm your host, Matthew Hurley, and here to present another edition of the podcast. Looking forward to the weekend's games in football. A few games in hurling under 20, Christy, Lory, Nicky, Rackard, all in action this weekend. There's no Joe McDonough, Leinster, Munster, but there's a lot of finals to get decided. Definitely in football, you have the Mayo and Tailteann Cup, and look at the stats and all that. Out of all the Gaelic football teams, out of the 33 in it, only New York aren't in action this weekend. Every other team are in action. So it's a jam-packed weekend of Gaelic football this weekend. We'll also talk about Camogie as well. And of course, I'm delighted to be joined by Seamus Brady from Clare to discuss this weekend's action. And before we get into the podcast, I'd like to give a mention to our sponsors at Capture Athletics. If you want the best gear around, check them out on their website if you haven't already. So first of all, Seamus, a hectic weekend hurling last week seems to be quieting down now on that front. But when you look at the football, 32 teams in action across Tailteann Cup and Mayo. Geez, we're going to be tired by the end of next weekend.
Yeah, it's going to be nuts, Matthew. Thanks for having me on again. Weekend review show on Sunday evening is going to be a bit hectic. There's going to be a lot of games to cover and everything like that. But look, the reality is, this is what we love. This is what we get into. The reality is, this is GA at its best, like the games and everything like that. Good to have you back, Denise, as well for another episode. But yeah, absolutely buzzing to get into it now. The amount of games, the amount of storylines heading into this weekend. I think my main eye is, in terms of football anyway, is on Derry. I'm keeping a very close eye on them. Can they bounce back? Because it's been quite noticeable how much they've fallen off in the last two games. Now, they're still a great team. Can they find their form again? This weekend will tell us a lot. And then you've got the Christy Ring final, the Nicky Rackard final, the Lory final, and a potential sellout for the All Ireland under 20 hurling final, which will be absolutely crazy. And then the Camogie jumping into round two as well. Some big results in round one. Going to be interesting to see. Wexford Galway is the main one that I'm keeping an eye on. Obviously, Wexford showed a lot of flair during the league. It's in Macaulay Park. Galway have to make the trip away from home. So should be an interesting weekend.
Exactly. So, yeah, a very interesting weekend, as you mentioned, in Camogie. Well, we will start with the weekend Gaelic games first. And the story that has brought all the headlines you mentioned there, the under-20 final between Tip and Offaly, and we will discuss it in stats and detail in it afterwards. But there was a problem this week, and it was obviously the ticket problems between the two counties with Offaly and Tipperary. Now, earlier in the week, there was a few problems with the Ticketmaster site. It crashed a few times. Offaly fans were struggling to get tickets. Tipperary were allocated a few tickets in their direction, but they didn't sell out. So now it's gone back to Offaly, and Offaly have gone back to the clubs for this. In an article written in the Offaly Express by Kevin Corrigan, the situation was explained, that this is about 1 or 2 days, so it's pretty recent. The ticket crisis for Saturday's All Ireland Under 20 Hurling Championship final between Offaly and Tipperary in Kilkenny is set to ease considerably, with clubs getting an allocation on Wednesday afternoon. Each club will get a region of 30 tickets, as Tipperary have not taken the full allocation, and some of these have been made available to Offaly. Other tickets may go on sale on the Ticketmaster website later, meaning Thursday or Friday. So, first of all, Seamus, the questions that most fans were kind of asking was, why is this game on in Nolan Park? Look, I do think, and I'll say this from experience, I do think Nolan Park's a brilliant ground. I think it's a well-kept ground, in fairness. And you have parking in, I heard online, Dicksboro GA Club. I was at a minor match involving Cork and Dublin last year, and there was parking available at the O'Loughlin Gales GA Club. So all the clubs are kind of spread around Nolan Park, and there's car parking spaces, and that's great to see. But there were pics put up on social media of the pitch in Nolan Park, especially after last week's game between Kilkenny and Wexford in the Leinster Senior Hurling Championship. And Bruce Springsteen, the concert there, seemed to have ruined the pitch by the looks of the images anyway. So what do you think of the whole situation, James? First of all, should the game be held in Nolan Park, in your opinion?
If the pitch isn't in the best of conditions, you would imagine at least a speculation of whether to move it. But the reality is, we're here now. We're right here at the weekend. It's Thursday. The game is very, very fast approaching. I feel like it's a bit too late now to change the venue. And it's a real credit to Offaly as well. Their fans, that they are just bringing insane numbers to an under-20 match. And it just shows the raw that is still there for hurling in Offaly. They may have gone down to the John McDonough. They may have even gone down to the Christy Ring, but they still have love for their hurling. And when you see like the teams that they're bringing through at under 20 level, like there's not a doubt in my mind. Like it's only a matter of time before they get out of the John McDonough. Like we have obviously the final coming up where they're playing against Laois. I've made them slight underdogs in that game because I think Laois have more experience. But I think even if they lose to Laois, it's only a matter of time before they get up. And like that graw and that passion that they have to go and pack out a stadium to watch their under 20s play, it shows how much it means to them and just why that they will be back when rather than if. And going into this game against Tip, look, they have a great chance. And it's obviously unfinished business. Tipperary literally broke their hearts a couple of years ago. So, like, couldn't really ask for a better rival to have in the final. Of course, it's Tipperary again. In terms of, like, Nolan Park, like, I would be interested to know what they projected for this game. Because when I'm looking at it online, it seems like this game has massively overshot any attendance expectations. So it is hard to move it to another ground at the drop of a hat just because more people have shown interest. Like if Offaly had a loss in the semi-final, Nolan Park would be a fine venue to host it. It's just Offaly are bringing so many people with them.
Yeah, definitely so. And I suppose like when you look at the situation with Nolan Park, apparently was decided that Nolan Park would be the venue even before the provincial finals with Offaly and Dublin, because Adam Streety seemed to know that it was in Nolan Park. So did Leo O'Connor, the manager of Offaly, after that win over Dublin. A dramatic win, by the way, and we will talk about the Offaly and Tip game in more detail after the football action. But it seems kind of fishy to me, look at the interview, Seamus, that Leo knew about it and Adam Streety knew about it, that it was going to be Nolan Park, no matter by hook or by crook. No matter if Offaly or Dublin got to the final, Cork or Tipperary, it was going to be in Nolan Park. Do you find that a bit odd that the final was announced even before the provincial finals were in action?
Like the final venue.
Yeah, that's what it looked to me anyway, because the likes of Leo O'Connor actually knew the venue even before TG Carr actually went to them for the interview.
I don't see it as too fishy. I think it's quite a normal thing to try and put the word out of where the game is going to be on as quick as you can so that people can make their plans for getting to the stadium and everything like that. I think they just massively underestimated how many Offaly people would go. I think that's probably the main issue with this. Like, I think they handed out the tickets to both of the counties as far as I know. Tipperary went with the traditional give it to the clubs. Offaly went online with their tickets, so a lot of people had issues getting them, and now they've switched and they've going to allocate them to the clubs, and they've had much more success with that. And a lot of people that were having issues getting tickets now are able to get their hands on tickets once again. I think if you go into this game, they had to pick a location and had to pick it sooner rather than later. And once you pick your spot, then a lot of things get moving. A lot of things get moving towards that stadium. People have to be asked to be stewards, and whereas you need the ambulance to be there in case someone gets injured. You need like the TV companies to be there. Like they all need to know where it is, and you have to let them know as soon as possible. So if they then decided, I'd say from about 2 days ago, it was too late to pull the plug and move it somewhere else. It takes a lot to move it. That's why, for example, it's really surprised me last year, or this year it was, that feels like ages ago, in the preseason competition when they moved the game in Wexford, I think it was, to somewhere else, wasn't it? Like at the drop of a hat. I was surprised at that. But that game wasn't being covered anywhere. This game is going to be shown live, so you need the setup and you need to be comfortable with the setup. I am surprised that they chose Nolan Park. It's a brilliant venue, but I think they probably should have known better that there was Offaly would be well supported, and maybe somewhere like an O'Moore Park that holds slightly more, or maybe somewhere like a Semple Stadium might have been worth a shout.
The football action, there were rumours and stuff like that earlier the week that the venue would be switched and stuff like that, and it kind of reverberated around the media when this was announced. An online petition was launched to change the venue of this under-20 final as well earlier the week. It was probably too late, to be honest with you, because it would have been a nightmare scheduling and things like that. So what are your thoughts on that? Somebody even putting up a petition to change the venue, was that a sign that the fans weren't happy that it was on in Kilkenny?
It's definitely a sign when they're launching petitions. They're not the best pleased with it. I would have liked to know where exactly they would have wanted to put it. because you can't really move it to O'Connor Park. Like, you can't really move it to where you have like literal home advantage. And I know that. But I would like to know where they would want it. Probably Semple Stadium. And look, like the other 20 lads there, like playing a final in Semple Stadium would be a dream. But at the same time, like, it's Tipperary's home stadium. Like, do you want to play there? Do you want to move the game to there? I don't know. Where would you, like, if you were in charge and you gave in and said, okay, we'll move it, where would you move it to?
It's a tough decision, to be honest with you. I think Michael Deedy, he was on the GR sometimes with Dan Casey in the last few weeks, actually suggested on TikTok Parky Keeve. But Parky Keeve is not in action this weekend with Cork and Donegal because of Bruce Springsteen, so that wouldn't be available. The Gaelic grounds, no, I think that's still a bit too far for Offaly. The Gaelic grounds wouldn't necessarily be a bad idea. That's if Nona Park isn't an option, but I will stick to my beliefs. I think Nona Park is still a good option for parking and things like that. The pitch is probably the issue that most fans would have with it. I think the parking and stuff is fine on it. So that isn't. I'm trying to think of other venues that could host it. Ennis possibly, Cusack Park.
Maybe, like I don't know. I was thinking almost there for a second, Dr. Hyde or something, but maybe I don't know. Probably not.
No, I don't think Dr. Hyde would host a hurling game, to be honest with you. Big
Pearse
hurling
Stadium.
game. Pearse Stadium.
Not quite. No, like I do agree with you. I think Nolan Park is the right decision, but I just think that they maybe misunderstood how many Offaly fans would travel to the game, and it's probably not the best timing with the Bruce Springsteen concert and everything like that. Like, the pitch probably won't be in peak condition, but both teams are playing on it, and like, we'll see who the best team is. I think either way, like that I do find that funny when teams complain about weather or the ball or anything. It's like the other team are playing with it too. So get on with it. And I do think maybe sometimes if the ground is bad, it suits the team that aren't as skillful. So you could look at maybe like it might affect Adam Screeney, that like he won't be able to get the ball up as quick. Maybe it might turn that into more of a physical battle. Interesting to note as well, if Bruce Springsteen is there, whichever end of the pitch that the stage was on will probably be way worse than the rest of the pitch.
Yeah, definitely. And we will talk about the game in more detail after the football action. And the first game of the football we will discuss this weekend is a big one for Derry, really, to gain a bit of confidence, to go through the motions, things like that in the group stage. It is Derry against Armagh in the All Ireland Senior Football Championship Group 1 on Sunday at 4 p.m. on RT2. It's on in Celtic Park. Like Kevin Kennedy asked this question for the GA Sports Tracker app earlier in the week, Seamus, he asked it to his followers, is this a must-win for Derry? Because really, when you look at the rubrics behind it, it isn't really, because Derry can still beat Westmeath in round 3 and go through. But in terms of a confidence booster, if Derry were to lose 3 games in a row, there'd be a lot of serious questions asked about Mickey Hart's team.
Yeah, and it puts them right in the danger spot for being in a preliminary quarter-final and going out of the championship. Like, if they have to go away to somebody, if they get a difficult away draw, like if they get a Mayo or someone like that, like they could be in big trouble heading into the preliminary quarter-final. So they need to get their act together now, because losing can become a habit just like winning can become a habit. Like for Derry, like for example, during the league, it felt like Derry could turn up and get the win. Like it felt like they were just on a roll. It felt like they were just kind of unstoppable at stages. And the thing is I had this feeling from the get-go with Mickey Hart and with Derry is like, while yes, I was like, you know what, I am buying in that I think they have everything there. But in my head, I was like, I'd love to see them hit a bit of turbulence and see how they react. Because you have to think, like with Mickey and Derry, like, I think the only goodwill between Mickey Hart and Derry will be when the results are good. I don't think Mickey has any rope as Derry boss. I think the minute that it goes south, I think the minute that it goes wrong, and he's out the door. And he's brought in to win All Ireland and out. Like, the grandfather of Tyrone Gaelic football is not going to manage Derry for 10 years. We're cashing in now on this team. We think we're good enough to win the All Ireland. We're going to go for it now. And I thought I think that they are good enough to win the All Ireland. I do. I think they have the players. I've seen them at their best. I've seen them go toe-to-toe with Dublin and Croke Park in a way that I haven't seen a lot of teams go toe-to-toe with that Dublin side. And they won on penalties. And they should have won in normal time. And they should have won in extra time as well. So the reality is they are damn good. But they seem to have lost their way in the last couple of games. Like, it's not like they got beaten. They got beaten handy. Like, against Donegal, like, they got swept aside. Donegal figured them out. And then against Galway, they weren't close to Galway at all. And Galway put them away. And that was the one that I was most surprised by, because I picked Derry to win that game. I said Derry have had plenty of time to dust themselves down after the Donegal game. They're going to come back with a vengeance and a statement that they're still a team to watch out for. And they just didn't. And Galway, like, definitely handled them in that game. So, in my opinion, going into this game, you've got an Armagh side who are seriously wounded again after another penalty shootout loss. Yes, they did beat Westmeath, but I still think the penalty shootout will be fresh in their heads. If Derry don't win this, I'm not saying panic stations, but I'm saying definite concern as to, like, have we lost all of that momentum now?
Yeah, exactly. So, and even the penalty shootout last year between the two sides with Armagh and Derry, like, is that kind of an indication that Armagh could really put up to Derry, considering they got so close to beating him last year in Clonus?
I do think so. I think Armagh are capable of getting that close to them again. I think the one thing that is never spoke about when you're talking about that Ulster final is the circumstances that was going on behind the scenes with Derry. And the way they had to change managers and everything. Like, I think that would have had an impact on the players. I think that would have been on the players' minds during that game. I think they wouldn't have been in the best headspace heading into that Ulster final. And I actually tipped Armagh to win. And a good reason as to why was because of that manager change. So, yeah, like, honestly, it's a mad one when you're talking about this game. But, yeah, I think Armagh are good enough to give them problems.
Do you think from a Derry point of view, like, Conor Glass didn't perform well in the last few games? Like, against Galway, he got a bit better, but against Donegal, he was very, very quiet in more sense than another. Shane McGuigan wasn't really great in a few games gone by for Derry either. Like, do Derry players need to step up, like McGuigan, like Glass, to prove that they are in it together for Mickey Hart?
They do, yeah. They need to step up because, as I was saying to you, it's one thing to get the results right when everything that you touch seems to turn to goal. This is what I was talking about at the start here when I was saying I'd love to see them hit a bit of turbulence, because the goodwill and the good success from Waddy Glenn's All Ireland win seemed to carry back into Derry. Like, if you're talking, like, Glass came back in, McFall came back in, Ethan Doherty came back in, and Mickey threw them right back in there for the league game against Kerry in the first round. And you were thinking, like, should you maybe have given them a little rest? And everybody was thinking that at the time. That's not hindsight. Like, you can go back and watch any episode. Like, we were saying that at the time. They go through the league campaign. All seems to be going well. Like, and then they lose to Dublin, but they immediately bounce back. They beat Dublin in the league final. And I was saying at the time that I thought, like, absolutely that it was one of the coldest moments of the year by Derry to go into it and go to the penalty shootout. And the minute, bear in mind the amount of trash talk that had been on in that game between Dublin and Derry. And when Dublin missed the final penalty, Derry didn't shake hands. I took that as a real sign that, like, Derry are making a statement here that they're not after the league, they're after the All Ireland. And since then, as I said, Mickey's been hit and the wheels have been rattled. There's no question about it. I'm not saying the wheels have come off the wagon yet, but they've definitely gone over a big speed bump or in a big pothole. And now it's like, can they get back on smooth road? I personally think that this game will be a draw. I just have a feeling that it will be an unsatisfying draw for both sides, where they'll both be a bit annoyed that it's happened. I think it will be very similar to last year's Ulster final, and that they'll both have chances to win it, but they won't.
Interesting, actually. Denise just commented here, I can't call this game a draw game. Good points, think alike. Yeah, exactly. But it's such a tight one to call. But even before I get into my prediction on Armagh for a bit, like they beat Westmeath, the result was all that matters in that game. The performance wasn't really what mattered. like if Rian O'Neill does come back into the team, which I don't know what's the injury situation with him, will he come back, will he not? Like, do Armagh have a point to prove here? Because they lost to Donegal, obviously on an penalty shootout. They didn't really beat anybody, and needed to just finally beat Down in a tight game, of course. But obviously, that Down were a Division 3 team. They were a Division 3 team this year, gone up recently to Division 2. Fermanagh got relegated to Division 3. So there is an argument that Armagh haven't played anyone in Division 1 level as of yet, other than Donegal, and they lost obviously on penalties. So is there a bit of pressure on Armagh? I know we talk about Derry pressure and things like that, but is there pressure on Kieran McGeeney's team as well?
There absolutely is. Because if you're talking about, like, with the penalty shootout, again, everybody's keeping their eye on you to see, like, are they going to come back after that one now? Because they've lost on penalty shootout again. And all eyes are on you for how you respond and how you recover. And, like, as you said, the Westmeath game, that was just one to get through. But it wasn't a headline grabbing win. It wasn't like Armagh put a beat down on Westmeath. Like, they got the win. They just did the job that was needed to be done, and they got out of there. But a true way to announce that you are back and you're over the penalty shootout is to beat Derry. That's a perfect way to do it. And like Rian O'Neill's fitness in general, I don't really know what the story is with it. Like, he seems to have been in and out all year. And I feel like he's just not 100% fit at all. So I'd be very interested to see how McGeeney uses him in this game. They've already beaten Westmeath. Like, if they can get something out of one of the games against either Derry or Galway, they're more or less safe and they're through. So will he risk Rian O'Neill now, or will he keep him in reserve, maybe bring him on for the last 20 minutes? I personally could see him doing that. I could see Rian O'Neill not starting and being brought in for the last 20 minutes to try and give Armagh a kick towards the finish line. I just think this game has draw written all over it. It's a game that Derry could have perfect. It's a perfect opportunity for Derry to make a statement that they're back. Put a big beating on Armagh. And if they do that, the hype will be right back. The hype will be right back that Derry are back and Derry are going to win the All Ireland. All the hype that we saw at the start of the year. But if they lose, people are just as quick to turn on you and say that you were never that good and it was only because you tried hard for the league when nobody else did and all this stuff.
The thing, like you said, a draw. Denise in the comments there said a draw. I don't want to be like, I'm thinking in my head draw as well, but do I want to be boring and say draw?
No, because it genuinely has draw written all over it.
Yeah. You know what? No, I'm going to go for a draw. I was going to think, will I go for Derry here? No, I'm going for a draw. I'm going for a draw. I think, look, they're too closely match teams in terms of form. Armagh haven't really beat anyone of note as of yet. And I think this has draw written all over it as well, because actually the highest ranked team in the league that Armagh beat, as far as I'm aware, I'm trying to think now, I think it was Cavan, obviously. Cavan finished third to Division 2, but they drew against Cork, they drew against Donegal, they lost to Donegal in the league final, they lost to Donegal in the Ulster final. They were very close to losing against Down. So there are a lot of questions about both sides. So I'm going to go draw as well. So it should be a very interesting game if it is a draw. One game that many people don't think it's going to be interesting is Westmeath against Galway in Monaghan on Sunday at 3 p.m. Now, someone mentioned during the week, I don't know, was it RT or off the ball off the top of my head, but they mentioned about Damien Comer's injury with Galway and the domino effect it could have on the Galway team leading on in the next couple of weeks. Like, I think it was actually off the ball in the football pod. Actually, Tommy Ruby, James Whittle, and Paddy Andrews were discussing it about the prospects for Derry and Armagh. And they were saying, from a Derry point of view, if they were to lose to Armagh and Westmeath were to sneak a win over depleted Galway being Damien Comer out injured, then Derry are in a lot of trouble. So do you see Westmeath putting off a shock here, Seamus, or do you think Galway will manage without Damien Comer?
I think that Westmeath will take a huge swing at it. And the thing is that while this is a Galway side that's now on back-to-back wins over Mayo and Derry, it's also a Galway side that nearly lost to Sligo just before it. So they have been very inconsistent all season. So I wouldn't rule out Westmeath definitely providing an upset here. Westmeath are going to get stuck into them. They're going to make themselves difficult to beat. And we saw last year that they were very plucky for Armagh. They were very plucky for Tyrone. Like, they were awkward to play against and nobody really liked playing against Westmeath. They have to carry that energy into this game. They have to carry that momentum into this game as well. I think that they will give Galway a lot of problems, but I think Galway will still get a win. I think without Damien Comer, even then, I think Galway's forward line will have too much for Westmeath. I think you look at like the likes of Rob Finnerty. I'd expect a big performance from Shane Walsh at some point this year. He's got to really go. And he has been, he's been threatening it. Like, he did come up with some lovely points against Mayo in the Connacht final, like, no question about it. He showed us glimpses of the genius that he is. I still think Galway will have too much for Westmeath. Even though Westmeath have home advantage, I think they'll take a massive swing at it. Westmeath, I think they'll take a huge swing at it. But I don't think they'll do it. I think Galway will nick it.
It's going to be an interesting. I think Galway will win it as well, but Westmeath definitely put up a test. And to be honest, all eyes will be on Galway and how they'll deal without Damien Comer in the team. Like, who do you think could come in to replace him? Because obviously he got that nasty injury against Derry. I don't know, was it in effect after the Garth McKinley stamp? I'm not sure entirely, and I'd like to keep it that way, obviously. But like, nevertheless, it is a huge loss for Galway to have Damien Comer missing, because what Comer offered Galway, especially the Connacht final against Mayo, was a focal point. And I question, who would Galway actually bring into the full forward? Like, could you put Matthew Tierney in there? Like, it's an interesting call for a power choice to make.
Yeah, they've never really gone with Tierney inside. I could see someone like O'Keneal go in there. Like, he had a pretty good league campaign. Liam O'Keneal, he had a pretty good league campaign. You could see maybe someone like that go in. Like, the instinct says Tom O'Cahan, but he's injured as well. So it's crazy how many injuries Galway actually have. There's a few outside the box shouts, but I would probably go with O'Keneal. I think he'll go with him.
Could they go Paul Conroy and put Killian McDade midfield alongside who's the midfielder, or John Maher? Yeah, John Maher alongside Killian McDade, and put Paul Conroy inside, because Paul Conroy has played full forward before.
It's actually, it definitely is an option. No question, it definitely is an option. Like, Conroy, the amount of experience that Conroy has, he'll be very comfortable playing wherever Joyce asks him to. And even in this game, like, it could be a way to kick the tires of Conroy and see, like, is he up for playing there if a game calls upon it later down the line? I think Galway will find a way to win. Regardless of who they put there, I think Galway will just find a way to win. But I'm saying they're going to make it hard for themselves. They're going to win by 2 points.
Yeah, I'm going to say Galway by about 3 or 4. Should be a very interesting game to see what Westmeath could do. Because remember, last season, Westmeath put up a test to Galway, and up until the Ray Canellan sending off, they were really in that game, and it will be very tight or very interesting to see how Westmeath turn up in this game in Mullingar. We move on to Group 2 now. 2 games in Group 2 being provided coverage by GA Go this weekend. Roscommon against Mayo in Dr. Hyde Park on Saturday at 5 p.m. is the first one. Probably the most interesting game on GA Go this weekend, in all honesty. So, even though I did say it was an interesting game, Seamus, and very, very evenly matched, these two sides have played each other before in the Camogie Championship. Are we expecting the same kind of game, Mayo to ease to victory, or do you think Roscommon will put up more of a challenge to Mayo in this game?
Yeah, it's crazy that they're playing each other again, isn't it? Like, they literally played each other a couple of weeks ago. Roscommon were very poor. Yeah, in the Hyde as well. Like, it's Roscommon were very poor in that game last time. Like, they really, really were poor. So they definitely have to do better this time. No question about it. They have to do better this time. They cannot let Mayo just waltz the victory like they did last time. Mayo took their foot off the gas in the final 15 minutes. They didn't really go for anything, and Roscommon just seemed like they were just like, all right, yeah, we're out. We tried. Aidan O'Shea got the goal very early on, and from that point on, Mayo just held Roscommon at arm's length for the rest of the game. I think if you go into this one, it's different now because Roscommon are fresh off a hiding by Dublin. Like, once the dam broke in Croke Park, it broke. And I feel like for Mayo, they're looking over their shoulder going, you know what, we have Dublin in round 3. If we beat Roscommon, we tee ourselves up potentially for a shot at beating Dublin and topping the group, which would be great because it would put them straight into the quarterfinals.
Yeah, no, I suppose there is a potential for that this weekend in this group in particular. We'll talk about Dublin and Cavan in a bit. But, like, for Roscommon, like, they only score. Yes, they did well enough in the first half against Dublin, and I watched that game, obviously. It was a very interesting game in the first half, but then, obviously, the dam broke. and we all know what happened then. But what I noticed with Roscommon, and Michael Murphy and GA Go pointed this out brilliantly, Roscommon only had 3 different scores against Dublin. They have to have more if they are to beat Mayo, or even go close to beating Mayo, because 3, I know Conor Cox, Dermot Murtagh and Darragh Craig are excellent footballers, but they need more scores to, come up trumps on Saturday.
They do, yeah. Now, the worrying thing was as well when you watch the Dublin game is like those 3 lads weren't the only 3 lads taking the shots on. Like I saw off the top of my head 3 players that put the ball wide for Roscommon. Like they were taking shots. It's just like they have their sharpshooters and then they have the people that can't really shoot. And especially in the second half, in the third quarter, those players kept ending up with the ball in their hand in front of the post. And you wonder, did Dublin do a little trick where they were like, okay, we're happy enough to let this guy get the ball because we don't think he's going to score if we hold him out to this point here. Kind of like in basketball, if you're like, right, I'm not letting you dribble to the basket, you shoot from the 3-point line because I think you're not going to make it. Like, it definitely was an interesting tactic, definitely an interesting defensive setup. But if you look at it in this game, like Roscommon were reliant on Cox, Murtagh. They were to keep them in the game. And it's crazy that like Enda Smith didn't score anything. Like John Small completely put Enda Smith in his pocket in that game. Like Smith didn't really do anything. And that speaks to how good John Small is. Well, I think one of the most underrated footballers in the country. Like I think a lot of people don't like the way that he plays, but John Small is a fantastic player, and he was on Enda Smith and he did a great job on him. They were clearly reliant on those 3 lads, Craig, Murtagh and Cox, keeping them in the game up until Ben O'Carroll, Ultan Harney, Ross Sprung from the bench, and then the game loosened up. And what happened when the game loosened up, it wasn't the Dublin defence that opened, it was the Roscommon one. And then the 2 goals from Basquel and from Con in that game. In this game against Mayo, it's difficult to know exactly what Roscommon should do because it's not like they went for it last time against Mayo. They were very standoffish, very defensive, and Mayo just found a way through for the goal. And the Roscommon never really looked like scoring a goal themselves. So I personally think in this game, have Roscommon learned enough in the last few weeks to make a change? No, I think Mayo are going to win again.
Interesting comment coming in from Denise again, and we talked about Damien Comer's injury from Galway point of view, but from a Mayo point of view, hope Mayo will be able to manage this game without the brilliant Paddy Durcan bursting forward, wishing him all the best in his recovery. And that's a main issue for Mayo, I'm sure, as well, because he's going to be a massive loss for this Mayo team. Obviously, they do have able replacements. Owen McLaughlin could still run up and down the field from wing back. There are others to come into the number 5 position, I'm sure, from a Mayo point of view. But Paddy Durcan's a massive loss for Mayo, isn't he?
So yeah, he's absolutely huge because not only is he like stapled on right half back, like he's filled the boots of Lee Keegan, but he's also their captain. Like he's their leader in that half back line. Even if he's not ever wearing the armband, like he's their captain in that half back line, and he's a direct attacking threat from the half back line that other teams have to think about. The guy just has insane ability. And on top of that, he's capable of performing a multitude of tasks. He's capable of moving up the field and marking somebody else. Like I remember the job he did on Jack McCaffrey in 2019 was among the best I've ever seen anybody do on Jack McCaffrey. He just stuck to his task and handled him. And that was in the game where Dublin hit the 3rd quarter blitz. But up until that point, Durcan keeping tabs on McCaffrey was one of the main reasons why Mayo were still in the game. Going into this game without him is massive. And it's a massive, massive plus for Roscommon that Durcan is not playing. Like, of course, they want to play against the best, but do you? Like, I mean, do you want Mayo at their best? And Paddy Durcan being gone is definitely a huge dent in Mayo's, not just in ambitions in this game, but their whole season. He's a massively important operator for them. I wish that he gets back soon because he is a brilliant player to watch.
You'd be thinking Mayo win, I'd be thinking Mayo win as well. But do you think this will be a romping, or do you think Roscommon could put up a test? Because what Roscommon need, regardless of the results, I think what Roscommon need is a performance. Can they get that on Saturday?
I'm going to say Mayo by 3. I'm going to say like Mayo 114, Roscommon 14 points. Like something where Mayo, again, do something almost similar to the first game where they hit them and get in front for an early lead. And then just kind of hold Roscommon off them for the rest of the game.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to go for Mayo win as well by about 4 points. It should be comfortable enough, but it should be tricky at stages. Denise came in with a comment about Mayo before we get into the next game as well. Also, would be interesting to see if James Carroll will be back on Saturday. Heard that he may feature the Roscommon or Dublin game. Should be very interesting to see that. And Denise is also saying Mayo by 2 points as well. So it should be an interesting game. There's no doubts about that. Cavan against Dublin in Group 2 on GAGO on Saturday at 7 p.m. Shame, to be honest, I think Dublin are going to win this game. Alcantar, in all honesty. I know it's in Breffni Park, but the loss of Paddy Lynch is massive for Cavan, and it proved that way against Mayo. Like, you look at the range of scores in that game, I think they only scored 1-4 from playing Castlebar. That is not good enough to play against Dublin, and no qualms about that. So Dublin, it should be an easy win, should it?
I would imagine so. Lynch, you're absolutely right. Like, you could see how important Lynch was to Cavan against Monaghan in the game that Cavan actually won. Like, everything went through Lynch that day. Everything went through him. And when Monaghan were on top, Lynch was the guy that was keeping them in the game. So for him to be gone is absolutely massive. Like, it's a season-long injury by the looks of things, and don't think he's going to be back anytime soon, which is definitely heartbreaking, not just for Lynch, but for Cavan. Going into this game, as you said, like you were talking about Comer, like Lynch is the focal point of Cavan's attack. So I don't really know how they're going to just replace him in time to beat Dublin. I don't really see that happening. And like compared to the last time that Cavan faced Dublin, like on top of that, I know Lynch was a lot, like was a young lad back then, like he wasn't the staple in the team. But Martin Riley, Gerard McKinnon, they've all stepped away. Thomas Galligan, Raymond Galligan, like it's not as good a Cavan side, and the last Cavan team got handled by Dublin. I think Dublin will win this by 7.
Like, it could be an opportunity for Conor O'Callaghan as well to add his scoring tally, because from play, Conor O'Callaghan's the top scorer with 4 goals and 10 points, and that stat is obviously on my website. Check that website if you haven't already. The Gaelic Statsman website is on my link tree. Like, could Conor O'Callaghan run riot here against Cavan? He did just that against Roscommon, to be fair. He scored 1-4 in that game, which was a pretty good scoring tally. Is this another game where he could romp on in this game? But then on the other side of the fence, could Pádraig Faulkner in particular go on Con, or could someone else from the Cavan backline go on him and just stick to him like glue?
I would imagine it's probably a job for Cillian Brady to go on Con. I'd say that's probably what's going to happen. And then Faulkner, they've tended to use him further out the pitch in all their games. Like, he was the one who kicked the amazing goal against Monaghan. I'd be surprised if they sacrifice him to put him back in full back on Con, because I feel like Con will hover quite close to the goal, especially if Faulkner is on him. I think he'll try to take Faulkner out of the game by hanging in as close to the goal as possible. And in terms of Con's individual scoring record, like Dublin don't really do the whole top scorer in championship type thing. Like, I'd love to know when a dub was actually the last championship top scorer. Like, the idea, I think, in the forward line with Dublin is you have 6 relatively equal threats that you need to watch out for. I think the only one who's not a firm scoring threat there, like we need to put someone on his right boot, is probably not a Scully. But at the same time, Scully always pops up with a couple of goals. So they're a really difficult forward line to prep for, and I feel like if Con is left in any space, the form he's in right now, man, he's going to do a serious amount of damage.
Then again, though, the top scorer from play last year was Colin Pascal. So
yeah,
so
that
like it was that
Pascal was scoring mainly goals.
Yeah, true. But Con's up there at the moment. I think Pascal's in the top 10. I have to double check that list, but there is some serious players in that list, obviously, and Con's at the top of the tree for that. Like, from a Cavan point of view as well, like Oisin Brady seemed to be taking the freeze against Mayo. Do you think they'll stick to him now that Paddy Lynch is gone, or will they go to Tyrone Madden, or what do you think? What will Cavan do in that sort of instance? Obviously, it's always no offense to the Cavan players. It's probably going to be a downgrade of Paddy Lynch, no matter who you put on the freeze. But like, who do you see going on? Would you see Oisin Brady doing it again to keep with the same consistency that Raymond Galligan is kind of doing as the Mayo game, or what do you think yourself?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Like, I think, you know, it is a downgrade on Lynch. Like, some of the frees that Lynch kicked against Monaghan, man, were absolutely top drawer. Oisin Brady obviously picked up the mantle. Be very interested to see how he gets on in this game. And, you know, it's going to be covered live. It's going to be against the Dubs. Like, there's not many bigger stages you can get to. So it'd be interesting to see how he holds his nerve. I probably would leave Oisin Brady on them. And it's interesting, like the way we're talking about it, like Raymond Galligan ironically could do with a Raymond Galligan and go, come up and take the 45s and everything like that, and just keep them in touch. Look, I think Cavan will opt for a similar style that Louth and Roscommon have gone with, try and stay in the game for as long as they possibly can. But I think it's a similar situation as the Roscommon game. I think when the dam breaks, Dublin will make hay.
Yeah, I think so as well. This could be 10 plus, in my opinion. Dublin could absolutely ease home. And obviously, Cavan, we don't want them to get hammered and things like that, but we'll have to go for a Dublin win in that one. But just before we get on to the other games, according to our predictions there, Roscommon and Cavan will both lose. And the winners of that game in round 3, according to our predictions again, would end up at 2 points. If it's a draw, it'll end up at 1 point. And one of them teams is going to go through to the preliminary quarterfinals. John Fogarty wrote about this at the Irish Examiner during the week. Do you think it would kind of make a mockery of the competition in a way that a team on 2 points or 1 point would go through to the preliminary quarters?
Yeah, I saw that point, like that you could have a situation where a team loses 3 games and somehow goes through. Like, it's just bizarre when you look at it. Like I think I seen the statement that was like, it only takes one team for that competition structure to be completely abolished. Like, it takes one team to lose 3 times and still make it into the quarterfinals. Like, in the year itself, it takes one team to lose 3 times and still make it there. That then will make people be like, hold on a minute, what on earth? Because if you look at the old system, I remember, like, I'm not talking about the qualifiers, I'm talking about the old system, like the knockout and everything like that. And I read an article that was really interesting, and it was like, what years did teams get knocked out at the provincial stage, where you were looking, thinking, if the qualifiers existed back then, they would have been in All Ireland contention. And you've got like Kerry 1983 is one that springs to mind, like when Cork got the late goal to knock them out of the Munster Championship, and that was 4 in a row winning Kerry, like, who won the All Ireland twice in a row in 84 and 85. Of course they would have been All Ireland contenders in 83. Then you have Dublin in 91, you know, seeing that Meath got to the final after the famous 4 in a row saga. So, like, but whereas this time, and Joe Bolly was saying this, is that you used to be able to beat a team in a shootout, and maybe you beat them once, but you very rarely beat them twice. And the qualifiers meant that you had to beat these teams twice. Now you have to beat them, 4 times to get them gone. Like, it is leaving itself in a situation where the more games and the more it's not straight knockout, the harder it is to get a Dublin out of the championship, because you might beat them once, but you're very rarely going to beat them twice. That's what we're seeing with Limerick.
That's true, yeah. In fairness,
about the 5 in a row. Like, is that if like Limerick's 5 in a row, if it was straight knockout, Clare would have knocked them out last year.
Exactly, yeah. And I suppose, like, last year in the group stages, we had that final day drama, obviously, and it ended up coincidentally, actually, as far as my memory goes, I don't think any team was on less than 3 points last year to finish third. That was just a weird set of events, because there was all draws and everything like that, and obviously you had weird results, like Cork beating Mayo, that stood out. You had Kildare beating Roscommon as well. Obviously all them stood out, but I do agree with John Fogarty's point, definitely. It does take one team for the whole situation to come into question, and we'll have to see if it does happen this year. Another group where it could happen, and we'll move on to this one now, is Group 4. Meath against Kerry on RT2 in Park Tailteann on Sunday at 2 p.m. Now, with Meath getting hammered the last day against Louth, by 10 points to be exact, and Kerry hammering Monaghan and have hammered everybody in the championship up until now, more or less. Like, they were comfortable against Cork, they were comfortable enough against Clare in the Munster final, they were really comfortable against Monaghan. You would expect a Kerry win here, wouldn't you?
Yeah, you definitely would. Like, that's another thing, is like Meath have been on the receiving end of 2 beatdowns so far in the championship. Like, it's been really, really confusing to watch. Like, they lost to Dublin heavily in the Leinster Championship. When you see how well Louth went toe to toe with them in the final, you would look at Meath and go, could you not have done a bit better? Like, I don't know, keep it to 10 points, and then you move on to the next game against Louth, and they kept it to 10 points. They lost by 10 points. But, like, in that sense, like, it's been a weird year watching Meath, because it's like, I would have looked at it and thought O'Rourke was the guy to get. I really thought O'Rourke would have been the guy to get, in terms of, like, O'Rourke, managed Ireland against Australia, plenty of experience, absolute legend in the county, and often spoke about what he would do with Meath. And just, I'm slightly interested in where it's going wrong, because have Meath got better under O'Rourke, in your opinion?
There are some aspects to say yes. In fairness, in the league, it looked that way. In fairness, they were playing good football. At times, they beat Louth in the league. Let's not forget. And that was the
Very
moment I was
lucky
thinking,
feel.
very lucky. Yeah, some may argue, but like against other teams as well, Donegal, they kept them to a good length as well. They drew against Cavan away from home, and that was a Cavan team that did well in the league, as fairness. They won the Tailteann Cup against a pretty good downside in Croke Park as well. So, like, there were signs that they were making progress, Meath, that they brought in these younger players, the likes of Shane Watts, the likes of Matthew Costello. I thought Meath were coming up at a higher trajectory. But then the two games in the championship, as you mentioned there, getting hammered by Dublin, getting hammered by Louth. I don't think there's as much pressure as on Colm O'Rourke in this game as any other game, because I think they're expected to lose against Kerry. But when it comes to Monaghan in round 3, then they have to get their confidence up before then, because if they don't, then they could be en route to a 4th loss in a row.
They definitely could. Like, and this is what we were talking about when we were talking about the league, and we were saying, oh, well, this team is grand. They have Tailteann. They won the Tailteann last year, so they don't need to worry about being relegated. It's like, this could be over in a couple of games, and then they're down in Division 3 for next year. So I think when you look at it this way, Meath are in a position where they have absolutely sensational footballers. Like, they do. They have the talent coming through, the Matthew Costellos, the Shane Wallaces, the Jordan Morrises, like the Jack O'Connors. They have them. They are there. It's about constructing them into a cohesive unit. Kerry, on the other hand, like, had it so easy against Monaghan in round 1. Like, you would imagine, I personally, like, just saying, I think it's going to be exactly the same as the Monaghan game. I think Kerry are going to win easy. Like, I don't see any challenge coming from Meath in this game. I think Kerry would love it if Meath did bring a challenge, because Meath, like, Kerry need to keep their levels up. Like, because if you're talking about this, Dublin are going to get a good game against Mayo. Derry, who a lot of people are talking about as All Ireland contenders, they're getting good games. Donegal, they got a decent game against Tyrone. They just won the Ulster Championship. They're playing at the high level. Kerry have not been laid a finger on. Like, Cork and Clare did okay against them, but never looked like winning the game. And this is what I mean, is like Kerry on that side, I don't know, it's going to be interesting to see just how they keep their levels up, and will they be a bit rusty when a game kicks off against a top opponent.
And even looking at the goals that Kerry have conceded in games as well, I think, yes, they haven't got tested. They look like winning those championship games majority, but I can't remember the number off the top of my head now, but they've conceded a goal in nearly every game this year. I think the only game that they haven't conceded a goal, I have to check the game, was Derry in the league in Austin Stack Park, and they didn't concede a goal against Mayo either. They were the only 2 games across the league and championship that they haven't conceded a goal in. They conceded a goal against Cork, against Clare, against Monaghan. I know they were comfortable, but they conceded a goal in that one. And they haven't scored a goal in the championship either. I know they were probably lower opposition than Kerry, that's well documented. But would you be worried from Jack O'Connor's point of view that they are conceding a goal a game, more or less? And they conceded 3, obviously, against Dublin and Croke Park as well. So the problems they are improving. They are improving. Jason Foley's come back into the team, obviously. And you have to imagine they'll improve as the weeks go on. But for them to be up at the level of the Dublins, the Donegals, the Derrys, the Mayos, Kerry need to improve in their defensive structure. And I think an aim for Jack O'Connor this weekend should be to keep a clean sheet.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you. And like, in the Monaghan game, even as easy as that was for Kerry, Monaghan still hit the back of the net, and it was with a very soft goal for Kerry to concede, and you could feel the frustration in the stadium when that ball hit the net. It's like, oh, for God's sake, how are we after losing a clean sheet in a game where Monaghan didn't turn up? And you're looking at it this way, like, Kerry's building block, the final piece of the puzzle to them winning the All-Ireland, was their defensive solidity. I haven't thought that they've looked as defensively solid since the All-Ireland final against Galway. Like, they played very well against Tyrone, but Tyrone played very badly in last year's quarterfinal. And then you look at the league this year, like, Con ripped them, and then teams have been getting chances going straight down the middle against Kerry. And even in the All-Ireland semi-final against Derry and the All-Ireland final against Dublin last year, like, Kerry were open down the centre of the defence a few times. Like, Paddy Small's goal ran right down the middle after turning over Gavin White. No cover. You look at Derry as well, the McKinless goal chance, again, right down the middle. Like, there was a lot of opportunities there for teams to get at Kerry. And I think that the quicker they can reset their defensive system to make sure that that's the cement that holds the wall together, their forwards will do the rest. So they need to focus on that and get that right.
Yeah, exactly. So even the goal chances they conceded, I didn't watch the Monaghan game because it was at the Cork and Clare game, obviously. But I see the Clare game, Brian McNamara could have easily hit the net. I think Dermot Coughlin could have hit the net as well. Icky Muguero eventually did. Against Cork, Chris O'Jones had a goal chance. Conor Corbett had a goal chance. Paul Walsh took his goal chance. So that's about 3 goal chances a game that I'm counting. Like, to be honest, better teams like a Dublin, like a Derry, will take those goal chances. So Kerry have to be aware of that. I do think Kerry will win this game, obviously. It's well documented. I do think their forwards are going in under the radar. I'm not sure do you agree with that. But their defence needs to, perk up a small bit and stop conceding soft goals. And that's what Kerry need to do in getting up there in the All-Ireland pedestal, obviously. But just before we leave this game, is there an argument that Kerry are going in under the radar, considering they're playing, opposition that are beneath their level, the likes of Monaghan, Cork and Clare, whereas Donegal, Dublin are getting far more media reception, if you like, and Kerry just aren't. It's just a bit of a weird situation. Do you think Kerry will still roar back into contention once it comes to Croke Park?
Yeah, I still think Kerry have probably the best forward line. I still think they have an outstanding crop of talent. And if they move just quietly along, just get the 3 wins, see who they get in the quarterfinal, and then just roll from there. Once they get out of this group and into the quarterfinal, they're only 3 games away from being All Ireland champions. Like, which is nuts when you put it that way. Like, they very much have tiptoed along. And they've stayed out of the way of any of the teams that are very, very difficult. I was expecting a hell of a lot more from Monaghan in that game. Just didn't happen. I think Kerry, they'll make light work out of Meath. I really, really believe that. I don't think Meath have the stomach to fight with them. O'Rourke didn't seem like he was drilling a fighting spirit into his players. He seemed like he was very much like, we'll beat them when we're ready type thing. I'm like, you need to go now. So, personally, I think Kerry will win this game, I'm going to say, by about 8 points.
Yeah, I'm going to say Kerry by about 8 or 9 as well, and it should be. Look, it will be fascinating in many ways to see what Meath team will turn up, because against Louth and Dublin, they weren't at their best, obviously. We'll see how they transform those forms against Kerry. Monaghan against Louth is the next game in Clonus on Sunday at 3:30. Again, that's not showing live, which I know would annoy a lot of people, but obviously you can hear it on radios and stations at Scorpio and all that, I'm sure. But this is quite a fascinating game, because if Louth win this, there will be a lot of questions about Monaghan and where they are going under Vinnie Corey. There's no doubt about it. But Louth seem to be on the right trail at the moment. And you know what, Seamus? I fancy them to win again.
Yeah, this one is really, really teed up for a scalp here, because the form that Monaghan are in, I cannot even stress, I was there at the Kerry Monaghan game. I can't even stress how bad they were. They were so off colour. It's the main thing that you always associate with Monaghan is you're like, right, no matter what level they're playing out, no matter what level the form is at, they will always give you a good, hard game. They will get stuck into you. They'll make life very difficult for you to play against them. And against Kerry, right from the start, there was just none of that. Right from the start, there was just letting Kerry do whatever they wanted to do. And I just couldn't really believe it. Especially in the first half, to think that it was 15 points to 2 at half time. We were like, what on earth is going on with them? Whereas Louth came to Croke Park with the belief that they were going to win. I fully believed that. I think Louth thought that they could beat Dublin in Croke Park. You saw Aaron was pointing it out that Sam O'Roy fell to his knees when the full-time whistle went. A load of Louth players looked devastated when the full-time whistle went. You know that Jared Brennan would have been pumping them up with that self-belief that, look, we can go and beat these lads in Croke Park. So I think going into this game, Louth, I don't think Louth are as talented as Monaghan in terms of player for player. I think Monaghan have a higher ceiling of what they're capable of getting to. But I think when you look at it this way, who's more likely to turn up closer to 10 out of 10? It's 100% Louth. So I think the safe money in this situation is Louth. I'm going to go with Louth to win by 1.
Yeah, I think Louth will win this game as well. And the performances have been absolutely brilliant over the last few weeks. Like Sample Roy, Craig Lennon, obviously from wing back has been sensational. Kieran Downey's been brilliant. Kieran Keane has been very good. Darren McDonald in goal. Tommy Durden in midfield. They've all played to their full potential this year, Louth. My question is, because we're both tipping Louth to win this game, obviously, how far can Louth go? A lot of people are suggesting they could even get to the last 8, which I don't think is a delusional opinion. I think it's genuinely a possibility for this Louth team. The way they're performing at the moment, the way they believed that they could beat Dublin and Croke Park as well. I think it will be interesting to see in round 3, can they put it up to Kerry? Because I think that'll be the acid test, considering the way Kerry absolutely obliterated them in Portage last season.
Exactly what I was going to say is that, like, the Dublin game last year was fresh in everybody's minds, and everybody knew you had Mickey Hart last year, had James Khalif last year, and you got absolutely destroyed. Can you be any different this year? Answer was yes. They were a lot better this year than they were last year. They held Dublin a lot longer than they did last year. They looked like there might be a slight, very small path to victory against Dublin in this year's Leinster final versus the absolute hopeless performance that was last year's Leinster final. Nobody thought that Louth were going to win that game after about 15 minutes. So going into this game against Kerry, again, same thing applies. It's the Kerry side that they got annihilated by this time last year. So it's up to Ger Brennan and to the Louth players and the Louth team to go and put right the wrongs of what happened under Mickey Hart when they were there and Kerry tore them limb from limb. It's time to go there. Go with a game plan, I'd say quite similar in some ways to the one that you went with against Dublin. Holding the game, see can they grind out a result.
Yeah, it'll be fascinating, I'm sure, to see how far Louth can go in this All Ireland series. But we're both predicting a Louth win against Monaghan this weekend. And we'll move on to the last group in this. And another game that isn't shown live this weekend, and there's a lot of questions over that, is Cork against Donegal in Páirc Uí Rinn on Saturday at 2:30. I am going to this, so there will be stats on the game, obviously, from Páirc Uí Rinn. But Donegal last weekend were so good against Tyrone. And a lot of people have been clutching at straws that Cork could put it up to them. The only way that Cork could put it up to them really is if Donegal, are tired after last week against Tyrone, which is a possibility. And you look at the distance that the Donegal players have to travel all the way down to Páirc Uí Rinn. So there is a possibility Cork could put it up to them. But it's obvious Donegal are the better team than Cork. But can Cork put off a shock here? Because I think the only thing that could be in their favour is the travelling that Donegal have to do.
Also in their favour is Cork are set up to be quite difficult when they're the underdogs. We notice Cork actually kind of get stuck in when people don't really give them a chance or give them a prayer. Cork tend to dig in. So even though Donegal are travelling a long distance, I still make them favourites. But at the same time, Cork are tricky. And they have been ever since John Cleary took over. He set them out in a certain way for the bigger teams, if you like, or not the bigger teams anyway, but the teams currently that are more successful, that are higher up the league table. He set them up in a way that makes Cork difficult to play against. And I think with Donegal as well, I think Jim will find them a little bit annoying at stages. I think he won't really like how the game is unfolding in front of him. But I think eventually Donegal will figure it out. I'm predicting a non-sensational victory for Donegal, something like a 4-point win or a 5-point win. But I don't think it's going to be an absolute hammering.
That's an interesting point, actually, because Donegal and Cork actually met each other on the first day of the league in Ballybofey, and Donegal won by 11 points at 123-26. Will that be at the back of Cork players' minds as well? The fact that they got absolutely obliterated at the start of the year by this team, and maybe they'd want to right those wrongs going into Páirc Uí Rinn on Saturday. And as well as that, Cork have beaten Clare in the championship already, and you would have to imagine that'll be enough to get them to at least a preliminary quarter-final. And will the pressure be off the Cork backs, off the backs of the Cork players in many ways? Because you see last year, they beat Louth, they went all guns blazing against Kerry and Mayo, and Roscommon indeed, and produce some good performances in those games. So could this be a positive for Cork? Revenge, number one, and number two, that they did get that win against Clare.
Yeah, no, it definitely can. Like, I think, I'm not saying that the players will necessarily be focused on the game that they played in the league. I don't think that's going to be playing too much into their minds, but it's definitely going to be talked about. Like, they're definitely going to speak about it. They're not going to ignore it. They're going to be like, we are not letting these lads come down. It's one thing to lose by that much when you're up in Ballybuffet, but it's not happening down in Porky And Porky the atmosphere, I feel like, will be good for this game. I feel like Cork fans will travel to it. Be a difficult one for Donegal fans to travel to as well. That's something that Cork have to try and do. They have to try and pack the house, make it as intimidating an atmosphere as they possibly can, get stuck into the Donegal lads. But Donegal are the only unbeaten inter-county side in 2024 for a reason. They are playing fantastically well. I think that unbeaten run is going to continue. I think Donegal are going to win by 4.
Yeah, I'm going to go for Donegal win as well, but Cork, I think they will put up a test considering the pressure is off their backs and things like that. But yeah, I think Donegal should win that game on Saturday, and I will be going to the game as well. The other game, Tyrone against Clare in Armagh on Sunday at 1:30 p.m. A lot of people thinking they're dismissing this game. Tyrone will win easily. Is there any hope for Clare in this game, do you think, Seamus?
It's going to be hugely difficult because you have a Tyrone side that A, has their backs against the wall, and B, also has home advantage. You have a situation where Tyrone lost to Donegal and it wasn't as close this time. Meagher got Tyrone's last point in the 56th minute. Donegal kicked for home. In this game, Tyrone have their backs against the wall and they need to get a result. And especially when you look at, like, Cork could be tricky for Tyrone. Like, Cork could definitely give Tyrone some problems the way the Cork set up. So I feel like this has to be the banker for Tyrone. They have to win this one. And I think they will. I think Tyrone will win it by about 4 or 5. But Clare definitely are no pushovers. So it's going to be a difficult game for them.
And as well as that, if Tyrone win this game due to head-to-head records and Cork lose to Donegal, then Clare are out of the championship. And essentially that Donegal-Clare game is an absolute nothing game on the last day of the group. So Clare have to go out all gun blazing at this. And as well as that, they might think the same as Tyrone, because they would think the Donegal game, not a hope. We're not going to win this game because Jimmy's going to keep wanting to get the momentum going with the Donegal lads, regardless if they beat Cork or not. So I'm sure Mark Fitzgerald will be thinking the same thing as Brian Dewar. I'm sure, James, they have to. If they have any hope of getting out of the group, they have to have that mindset.
Yeah, you have to select kind of out of your 3 games, which is the one that you think is the most winnable. Put a lot of the energy into that. Put a lot of the emphasis on that game, right? We leave this game with a win. And I personally, I think that Tyrone will be having that same idea as Mark Fitzgerald. That you need to look at this one and go, okay, it's Clare at home. We have Cork away, who will be tricky. Or we won't have home advantage for the Cork game. That will be tricky. And then you've already lost to Donegal. So I think Tyrone will be looking at it and saying, okay, when's the time? The time to bring the hammer down is against Clare in Healy Park.
One more question before we get on to the Tailteann Cup. If Tyrone were to lose this game, would there be a lot of backlash with Brian Dewar in this management team? Because if they lose this game, it'll be almost a disaster for this team.
Definitely wouldn't be a great look, because Tyrone have only really lost so far to teams that have been of the highest standard. So they've lost to Dublin, they've lost to Derry, they've lost to Kerry, and they've lost to Donegal twice. If they now start dropping their level and losing to Clare, who are going to play in Division 3 next year, a lot of people would be very annoyed about that. So yeah, I think it's a big, big game for Tyrone.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. And that's the All Ireland Senior Football Championship wrapped up, and we will move on to the Tailteann Cup, and we'll do this by group. So in Group 2, we have Sligo against Antrim. That's the Lloyd GA Go game this weekend on Sunday at 4 p.m. in Kingspan, Breffni Park. This is the final round games, obviously. And Wexford against Tipperary in Group 2 on Saturday at 3:30. And just a reminder, says of the table, Sligo are on 4 points, Antrim are on 4 points, Wexford on 0, and Tipperary on 0. So the situation at Sligo and Antrim, the permutations and things like that, is pretty simple. It's pretty straightforward. This Antrim have to win to get top of the group in this one. Any other result, and Sligo top the group. Wexford and Tipperary is a bit more complicated, given that New York go into the preliminary quarter final, and it goes down to the worst third place side actually goes out of the Tailteann Cup because of New York's involvement. So you would imagine Wexford or Tipperary, a win is essential for either side to get there. So first then side go Antrim, Seamus. There's not much pressure on these two considering the both sides are in the knockout stages regardless of the results, but an automatic quarterfinal is on the line. As for Wexford and Tipperary, it's a must win for both sides.
Yeah, no, it certainly is. And like, you look at it this way, Tipperary have been in the doldrums now, like down in Division 4, and they've become pretty rooted in Division 4. Like, they didn't push for promotion at all this year. You look on the other side, Sligo and Antrim, that game could be a really, really enjoyable one because the two teams are kind of free to express themselves and both teams have cracking forwards. I'd fancy Sligo to take to take the game against Antrim, and I will shade it to Wexford. They've been impressing me throughout the league campaign and throughout the championship campaign.
Yeah, I'd agree with both. I'm still going Wexford to win, and the Wexford Tipperary games on Netwatch, Cullen Park and Carlow as well. Just for context for our listeners and viewers, I think out of the other groups, Group 3 is the one to look at when you look at all the permutations. So we have Fermanagh against Laois on Saturday at 3:45, and that game is on at Glen Brothers Pierce Park in Longford. And in the other game in the Group 3, you have Wicklow against Carlow on Saturday at 3:45, and that game is on at Fermanagh Park in Dublin. So the situation in this is a lot more complicated. Fermanagh are on 3 points. They are most likely in the next round, but they want an automatic quarter-final spot. Laois are all but through as well. They're on 3 points as well at the top of that group. As for Carlow, Wicklow have to win this game to stay in the Tailteann Cup. They're on 0 points. Carlow are on 1. And Carlow, a draw or a win would do them. So how do you see these games going?
Very, very difficult to call. Wicklow and Carlow are the type of two counties that always have a performance in them randomly, like just out of nowhere. Once you're not expecting it, all of a sudden they just give a top draw performance. I think Fermanagh will close it out. I think Fermanagh will make it 3 from 3 in their game, top the group. They have seemed like they're on a bit of a mission now, and especially when you consider that they lost to Laois last time. Like, that Laois were the ones that knocked Fermanagh out of the Tailteann Cup last year. I think that Fermanagh will look at themselves and say, we've got some unfinished business with these guys. So I think Fermanagh take that one for me. Then Wicklow and Laois in the other game. The Wicklow and Carlow, in the other game. Very, very difficult one to call again. But I'm going to go with Carlow just because Carlow seem to get better when the Tailteann Cup comes around. And when you see how Wicklow collapsed in their game against Fermanagh, I don't think it bodes well if it goes down to the wire in this game.
Yeah, I think it's two very interesting ones to call. I'd probably go for Fermanagh to win one of them. I'll go for Wicklow to beat Carlow. Like, Wicklow need a win. I know Oisin McConnell's team badly need one. A win or nothing else will do. So I'm going to go for Wicklow in that game. As for Group 4, there's one game to really look at it. This one is Limerick against London on Saturday at 1:30. Both these teams are in the preliminary quarterfinals no matter what happens, but this is for a home draw in the next round. So if London win or draw, it'll be enough to get them second place. If Limerick have to win basically or get a draw, and I think they're on a difference of -6 on 2 points at the moment. So you'd imagine Limerick will do enough to get to third at least and get into the preliminary quarterfinals. So that should be enough for them. And it is a difficult one to call. And Down against Offaly is a nothing game, literally. Down are top the group. Offaly finished bottom. Offaly are out of the competition for definite. So that's a bit of a relevant call. We'll go for Down to win that one. But Limerick and London should be an interesting one to call.
Yeah, just touching on the Down Offaly game, it will be a difficult weekend for the Offaly footballers just because, everybody's going to be focusing on the under-20 hurlers. You'd think personally for Jack Bryant and Cormac Egan and the under-20 lads, like, they'll on some level be feeling like, God, only feels like yesterday that they were them and they had the eyes of the country on them, not just Offaly, but like they've really stank the place out in their Tailteann Cup campaign. They've had 2 terrible performances back to back. So it's going to finish it off with what looks like it could be another beatdown. 3 terrible results in the Tailteann Cup and miles away from where I thought that they would be at this stage of their development. I thought that they'd be a very entertaining team to watch in the Tailteann Cup. Not winners of the Tailteann Cup by any means, but like definitely pushing semi-finals. And it's just not happened at all. And then in the Limerick-London game, very, very interesting. I don't think Limerick will take London as lightly as Offaly took them. I don't think that London will go away from home to Limerick and beat them. I think that Limerick will actually get the win in that game.
That Limerick London game's on a part of the park, so it is a neutral venue, so it could be quite an interesting one to call. I'm going to go for...
I'll go Limerick.
Yeah, I'll go for Limerick as well. Why not? I'd love the Limerick neighbours anyway, especially in the football term. So, yeah, I'm going to go for Down to beat Offaly as well. Well, it's a bit of an irrelevant game, isn't it? So, not really worth talking about. And as for Group 1, Kildare are up against Leitrim at 6 p.m. on Saturday in Laois Higher O'More Park. Or, sorry, that's in Glen Brothers Pierce Park in Longford. It's the other game in Laois Higher O'More Park. It is Longford against Waterford on Saturday at 2 p.m. that day. So, like the situation in this one, Kildare, Leitrim, both sides are in through to the next round. Regardless, the winner goes through to the quarterfinals automatically. The losers in the preliminary quarterfinals. Longford and Waterford, given their points difference, Longford are minus 21, Waterford are minus 29. Even if one of these sides win it by a tight margin, it is very unlikely that these sides make it to the next round. So I think the most realistic objective, no disrespect to Waterford, but if Longford actually beat Waterford to a pulp, they actually might have a chance. But do you see that happening, Seamus? Do you think Longford could save their season here?
No, I don't think so. I think that I haven't been impressed by Longford under Christy. I would be surprised if Christy's still in the job next year. It's disappointing to see because like they've fell flat on their face now in 2 league campaigns in a row and haven't really done anything in the Tailteann Cups either. So I think it's been disappointing for them. I think when you look at when you look at how Waterford have been willing to battle in pretty much all of their games, bar probably the Kildare game, they've been battling against Leitrim. They battled to the end against Clare and they beat Tipperary. So I think Waterford will give it hell against Longford. I do think Longford will win, but I think Waterford will give it hell and it won't be more than 10 points anyway. In the other game, I'm really enjoying watching Kildare, to be honest. They're finding themselves again. They're finding their form. They're starting to have a little bit of confidence in their ability again, which is great to see. Even though it's not really important, I do think Kildare will still beat Leitrim.
Yeah, I think Kildare will win as well. And Longford beat Waterford, but only slightly so, to be honest. And I don't think it'll be enough to get them into the preliminary quarterfinals. So that's all the football this weekend. Hurling, obviously, there's no Leinster-Munster, but there are some finals to be taken care of. And Camogie as well. We'll get on to the Camogie later. Firstly, Tipperary against Offaly in Nolan Park on Saturday at 7:15 p.m. on TG Car, and should be an absolute cracker of a game. It's set up to be some game in action in Nolan Park. And I have stats here and scores for both sides. So we'll start off with Tipperary and look at their journey to the finals. So they beat Limerick 318 to 117. They beat Waterford as well. They beat Cork by 320 to 18 points. That was quite an interesting scoreline considering the final. We'll get on to that in a bit. They actually lost to Clare by a point, 114 to 18 points, and they beat Cork by 119 to 21 points. Not salty over this, but it was a goal. Just saying.
Yeah, look, it is facts. Like you see the ball hitting the back of the net in one of the photos.
Yeah, exactly. Look, this isn't about Cork, it's about Tipperary, so we will move on from those kind of decisions. We'll go on to their total score. So they've averaged a scoring rate of 280 per game, and they've conceded an average of 280 or 18 points per game. They've only conceded 1 goal in this championship, only to Limerick in the first game, which is quite incredible. Darren McCarthy, 1 goal and 38 points across the 5 games for Tipperary, which is incredible. Oisin O'Donoghue with 411 for play, Senan Butler with 4-6, obviously the hat-trick against Cork in that 320 to 18-point victory. You have Conor Martin there as well, Paddy McCormick, Sam O'Farrell's been really impressive in midfield for the Premier County as well. Moving on to Offaly and their journey to the final. They beat Dublin by 118 to 214, drew against Galway 15 points to 112, hammered Laois to a pulp really, 128 to 29. Beat Kilkenny 270 to 216. That was a close one there. Shane Ridney scored 2 goals in that particular game. And then beat Dublin by 118 to 115. They've averaged a score rate of 119 per game and have averaged a concession rate of 212 per game. That is an interesting point to look at because Offaly have conceded a goal in every single game. Tipperary have only conceded a goal in only their first game. They haven't conceded a goal in 4 games, which is absolutely incredible in its own right. We'll get on to their score. 150 for the boy wonder himself, Adam Screeney. 311 for Shane Ridney from play. Dan Burke has scored 113. Barry Egan with 7 points. Colin Spain with 4 points. They've been all impressive for Offaly in this run as well. And worth noting as well, These two counties met each other in the minor All-Ireland final in 2022, and Tipperary won it after a late gallivanting effort, obviously. And a lot of them players across both sides are on these particular teams as well. So I'm looking forward to this, Seamus. Are you?
I'm absolutely buzzing for this one. Like, this is probably one of the most anticipated under 20 hurling finals that I can remember. I mean, if you think about it, like, the fact that we have such a clear storyline between them as well, like Offaly captured the hearts of the country as well when they were on their minor run to the final, and then Tipperary were almost in essence the villains that broke the brave Offaly team's hearts like in that game. And it was absolutely heartbreaking for them, but they were brilliant on that day. And when you look at how players like Screeney have just carried the can into under 20 level, and indeed at senior level too, like, it's an absolutely fascinating one to watch. And Offaly are going to travel in droves for this game. And you're carrying as well the fact that a lot of people think that Tipperary shouldn't be here because of that goal that Cork did get in the semi-final. So, in the Munster final. So, yeah, a lot of people are going to be rooting for Offaly. And the stadium is going to feel like it's Offaly's home stadium. I'm going to go with Offaly to avenge the minor loss of a couple of years ago.
Interesting. I think the heart always is going to go for Offaly because of the underdog mentality with Offaly and things like that, and Tipperary obviously being the favourites in many aspects. And obviously, I think a lot of people want Offaly to win this game, but I'm going to burst the bubble. I'm looking at stats here, and I think Tipperary will win this game, and specifically for one reason: the defence. Tipperary have only conceded 1 goal in 5 games. Should have been 2. Okay, that's the last reference on that. But Offaly have conceded a goal in every game so far in their journey. Would you find that a big concern, considering Tipperary's defence has been really tight in the 5 games?
True, and they have been, but they haven't faced the likes of Adam Screeney yet. And don't get me wrong, Cork have brilliant forwards, no question about it. But Cork missed a lot of chances against Tip as well, man. I feel like Cork missed a ton of chances. Tipperary's defence has been brilliant, but I think in forwards like Screeney, I think they're coming up against a different level of forward, and I feel like it will be very, very difficult for them to stop him. I think Offaly will get a goal. I think they'll just about shade it. Like, I think it would be so heartbreaking if they were to lose this one as well. And it's the way that the whole county has bought into it as well. I just feel like it has to be theirs. I'm going to let my heart overrule my head. Offaly to win.
It's going to be interesting to see who goes on Adam Screeney, though. Will it be Aaron O'Halloran in the full back line? It could be. Like, you see what Cork actually did with Adam Screeney last year. Adam Screeney is a skillful hurler, but as soon as you put a big, muscly guy on him, this is my worry. This is my worry with Offaly. If you put a muscly guy on Adam Screeney and they could basically dominate him in aerial duels or whatever, then Offaly don't offer much else. I don't know, is that an argument? Say, look at the final last year against Cork. I know he was only 18 at the time, to be fair, Adam Screeney. But is what Cork did last year something Tipperary could do this year?
I think it's something that they will do. Like, when they watch how Cork kind of managed to put a bit of a leash on him. Like, it's definitely is, don't fight fire with fire. Like, try and hit him somewhere where you think he might be weak. And they went for the power. And it definitely did affect his game. And this the other thing is, like, Mikey Butler as well was put on him in the club championship, Kilcomer Cloughey against O'Loughlin Gales. And Mikey Butler is tenacious, man. Like, Mikey Butler is, like, people would look at him and go, well, because he's not the tallest, guarantee that fella's a strong bucko. Like, I guarantee Mikey Butler, if he hit you a shoulder, you'd know all about it. And I feel like he was a nightmare matchup, actually, for Adam Screeney, because, like, in terms of welcome to senior inter-county hurling almost, because, like, Kilcormac Cloughey, Screeney's their standout forward, and Mikey Butler was, like, tailor-made, in my opinion. And I don't think Screeney scored from play against O'Loughlin Gales, and I think that's no coincidence when you looked at Mikey Butler was on him. So I think there's 2 games to look at there, and Screeney, I think he hasn't done extremely well yet with a guy who's been literally detailed to just mark him and don't care about where the ball is, just follow Screeney. who's also much physically bigger than him, who can do that. Like a type of defender, like, try to give examples here, like a Sean O'Donoghue, like a Mikey Butler, like someone who can just follow you around, is quick, but is also really physically strong. Screeney is still a young lad.
To be fair, though, Dublin look, to me anyway, they look more physically powerful than Offaly in that Leinster final, but Screeney still showed his skill, especially for that point near the sideline. If you've seen it online, it was absolutely incredible in its own right. So there are ways that Adam Screeney could come into the game because he's just that type of hurler. So it will be interesting to see. A lot of people hope Offaly to win it. You're going for them. I'm going to go for Tipperary because of the goals. They've only conceded 1 goal and just can't get over that stat. And as well as that, before we go for this game, obviously, we did mention Adam Screeney and obviously a lot of attention on him. But a lot of attention on the other side of the pitch as well. Darragh McCarthy for Tipperary. That point that he took against Cork was absolutely incredible. He won a Hogan Cup, a schools level cup for the CBS against Ard School Reach at the start of the season. He won an under-20, obviously, with Tipperary last week by getting the winning point against Cork. If he was to get an under-20 All-Ireland, that would be a brilliant year for the young lad as well. So, like, it might not be the Screeney show, but it could very well be the Darragh McCarthy show in this game.
Yeah, no, certainly. Like, I mean, he's been the other threat down the line there for Tip. And certainly it's definitely given them a boost in terms of like at senior level. Like a lot of people are talking about, you know, it's time to out with the old, in with the new. He's definitely put his hand up as being someone that needs to be considered if you're bringing in the new, because like he's an absolutely supreme talent. And if they win, you know, he'll have a big part to play in it.
Yeah, exactly. The Dr. Harty Cup final that was, but yeah, he was absolutely incredible in that game against Ard School Reach. He was incredible for the CBS at schools level as well, and he scored the winning point the last head. It was just a stuff of dreams for him. So will it be Darragh McCarthy? Will it be Adam Screeney? It will all be revealed on Saturday. But me and Seamus are going for different predictions. I'm going for Tip. Seamus is going for Offaly. We'll see what happens. That isn't the only final in hurling, obviously, and it is the end of the Tier 2 hurling competition other than Joe McDonough, obviously, this weekend. We'll start off with the Christy Ring Cup final, Kildare against Derry on Sunday at 2:15 from Croke Park, live on the TG Car YouTube channel, and I have stats for this game as well. So we'll get on to Kildare first, their journey to the final. So they beat Sligo quite comprehensively, 219 to 2-8. They hammered Wicklow, 327 to 14 points. They beat Derry themselves. That was the first outing between the sides, 219 to 18 points. They hammered Tyrone, another hammering in that one, 231 to 11 points. And they beat London by 2 goals and 20 points to 318. They've averaged a scoring rate of 224 a game, and they've conceded an average of 113 per game. And worth noting as well, the only games where they conceded goals in were the Sligo game, the first game, and the last game against London. So their defence is really, really tight. There's no doubts about it. Look at their scores in this run as well. Jack Sheridan, 3 goals and 30 points so far. David Qualter with 119. James Burke, 19. Darragh Guarine with 18. Murish Curtin with 17 as well. And the Borons in Keane and Conan scoring 15 points between them. Simon Lacey there with 6 points. Cathal Dowling, with a 2-goal tally as well. Moving on to Derry and their journey to the final. Starting off with Wicklow, they beat them by 17 points to 12. Hammered Tyrone, 226 to 13 points. Lost to Kildare, obviously, 18 points to 219. Beat London by 220 to 213. That changed their season completely. And beat Sligo by 430 to 19 points. They've averaged a score of 221 a game, and they've averaged a concession rate of 150 per game. And look at their scores on the list here. Their top scorers, Cormac O'Doherty, obviously the Slot Neil Club with 41 points. Rory O'Mealan with 319, if I pronounced that correctly. Darragh McGilligan with 13 points. John Mullen with 2-6. Corey O'Reilly with 10 points, and they have a lot of player scores there on the Derry team. So how do you think this will go, Seamus? You would imagine Kildare would be the favourites, look at the score lines and the fact that Brian Dowling is their manager. But Derry would really put up a test in this game.
Yeah, Derry will definitely put up a test. Like, I think it's a bit of a surprise that they managed to pip themselves in ahead of London. Like, I mean, me and you were saying at the start that London definitely looked like the team that were the most likely to challenge Kildare, but we've all had our eye on Kildare from the get-go here. Kildare definitely showed that they were able to mix it in the Joe McDonough Cup last year and were quite unlucky to go down, to be honest. And and they've looked like they're on a one-way ticket out of the competition since this began this year. Like you brought up the scoreboards there. The difference in their average scoring versus their average conceding is like jumps off the page. Like they have proven to be really, really a problem for everybody in the Christy Ring Cup. I think they top it off, man. I genuinely think the form of Jack Sheridan, James Burke is always capable of coming up with some big scores. Murish Curtin as well as a cracking player. Like, I think it has it written all over it that they top it off with a Christy Ring Cup in Croke Park. But you never know. And like Derry have some crafty players, and you would never really rule them out of being able to derail Kildare's push for what seems like an inevitable Christy Ring Cup. But hurling has a punchline, doesn't require you to get the hurling has a sense of humor. Sorry, it doesn't require you to get the punchline, and I feel like Kildare could be caught, but I don't think they will. I think Kildare will win.
I think Kildare will win as well. Brian Dowling seems to be doing brilliant in that job in general, and exactly winning the All Ireland titles, 2 All Ireland Camogie titles with Kilkenny. That experience you can't buy. And in coming into Kildare, I think that was a massive coup for the Kildare County Board. So I think Kildare will go on and win that game, but Derry to put up a test, definitely. The second Tier 2 final, it is the Nicky Rackard final between Donegal and Mayo on at 4:15 in Croke Park, live on TG Car YouTube on Sunday. And I'll bring up the scores for both of these sides here. So starting off with Donegal, who have been absolutely brilliant in this campaign. They beat Armagh by 22 points to 112, beat Mayo themselves 21 points to 13, hammered Monaghan by 427 to 15 points, beat Roscommon by 125 to 210, and beat Louth by 419 to 120. They've averaged a score of 220 per game and averaged a concession rate of 113 per game. Look at the scores. Jerry Gilmore's at the top of the list there with 1 goal and 34 points. Liam McKenny with 120. Rory Campbell with 2 goals and 10 points. Sean Ward with 1-6. You've Declan Coulter up there as well. So is Peter Kelly. Darrow Whaledig is also up there from a Donegal point of view. So they'll be definitely gunning for this Nicky Rackard final. Moving on to Mayo, they have beat Monaghan 424 to 28. Lost to Donegal, rather 21 points to 13. Beat Louth by 322 to 17 points. Hammered Armagh 429 to 116, and drew against Roscommon by scored a 216 to 119. That was obviously enough for Mayo to get into this final. They've averaged a score of 320 per game, and they've conceded an average of 116. And look at their scores before we make a prediction on this game. Cormac Phillips has scored a total of 422 this season. Shane Boland with 121. Sean Regan with 48. Liam Lavin with 12 points. The goalkeeper, Bobby Douglas, is on 9 points, 9 frees, obviously. Owen Delaney, 1-6. John Hearty, 2-3. Adrian Phillips is up there, so is Owen Collins, and so on and so forth. So very good scores on the Mayo team. To be honest, Seamus, at the start of the season, I fancied Mayo to win this Nicky Rackard Cup, but looking at Donegal's scorelines there, I can't see anything other than a Donegal win.
It's a similar situation, isn't it, to Kildare? Like when you're looking at their scores and everything, that Donegal have stamped themselves as being the team to watch. But it was like, do you remember the game against Mayo? That was the one that was a big shock when it happened. I remember being like, wow, Donegal beat Mayo. That's the turn up for the books. And I remember thinking, like, were Mayo like maybe off the pace on the day, but seeing how Mayo bounced back and got some big wins, like put up some big score lines, you immediately realize, no, like Donegal are just very, very good this season. And like they've definitely put a stamp down that they want to go up to the Christy Ring Cup. And like with form like this, you wouldn't bet against them actually sticking in the Christy Ring Cup next year. Like if they get up, obviously Mayo are going to have their sight set on revenge. And like this could be the time where Mayo come back and prove that we were right to initially back them to win the competition, because they could just beat a Panto villain and tap Donegal on the shoulder and be like, no, not so fast. You did great, but we're going. You wouldn't know. Donegal have been an absolute credit to themselves. Either way, I think that they will. I think that they'll do. I think I agree with you in the sense that, like, when you look at their scores, they have been near flawless through it. So I feel like they finish it off with the cup.
And they've won every game, and they're going to win a sixth, in my opinion, as well. And Seamus's end, we're both predicting a Donegal winning that one. And the last hurling final of the weekend is on Sunday, 12:15 p.m. between Fermanagh and Longford in the Lory Cup final. That game is live on TGR YouTube as well. And I'll bring up the scores for both of these sides as well. Starting off with Fermanagh, their journey to the final. They beat Leitrim by a scoreline of 19 points to 1-9. They drew against Cavan 5-12 to 3-18. They beat Warwickshire by 327 to 8 points. They beat Lancashire by 123 to 20 points, and they drew against Longford 221 to 318. And obviously, both of these sides are playing each other, so it'll be interesting to see. They won't go for the draw. Obviously, they'll have to go for the win, both of these sides. They've averaged a score of 221 per game for Fermanagh, and they've averaged a concession rate of 116 per game. Look at their scores on the page here. Danny McHugh is top of the list with 230 to his name. Sean Corrigan won 125. Brian Teahan with 29. Quaylen Duffy with 17. A guy that has been touted from Fermanagh fans, Luca McCusker, for so many seasons. Fabulous hurler, obviously. But the fact he's down to fifth in this list shows that Fermanagh players are stepping up in this competition. So they could really stake a claim in this final in Croke Park. Obviously, Luca himself has 7 points to the board, which isn't a bad tally, obviously. And he is an important player for Fermanagh, no doubt. Looking at Longford's journey to the final, they beat Lancashire by 222 to 10 points, lost to Warwickshire 216 to 221. So their season could have derailed then, but they stayed focused in fairness to them. They beat Leitrim by 222 to 3-9, beat Cavan 25 points to 119. That was the key result in getting into this final, and drew against Fermanagh, obviously 318 to 221. They've averaged a score 220 per game and averaged a concession rate of 215 per game. Look at their scores, and one name jumps off the page here. Cian Darcy, 3 goals and 54 points. And this guy plays club for Kilruan McDonagh. And just for clarification, because I wanted to find this out about his connections between Kilruan, McDonagh and Longford. Cian himself is from Tipperary, but his mother is from Longford. That's how he qualifies to play for Longford. He's playing for this Longford team. He's excelling, and fair play to him. David Buckley with 211 to his name as well is excelling too. Cathal Milan has 1 goal and 8 points. Oisin Gately with 1-6. Paddy Lynham's up there as well. So is Ruben Murray, Joe Rabbit, Evan Tully, and all them players for Longford. So, to be honest with you, Seamus, by the looks of this, Fermanagh have a lot of scores here, and Luca McCusker is down this, which actually proves there's a lot of players like Danny McHugh, Sean Corrigan actually stepping up to the play for Fermanagh. Whereas Longford, yes, David Buckley scored 211, but it all seems to go through Cian Darcy with that scoring tally. So I think that might be enough to see Fermanagh over the line, the spread of scores that they have in the team.
Yeah, it's a big year for both of the counties, like especially when you consider how the year started off. Like there was talks of scrapping those teams from being in the competition and everything like that. But when you look at it this way, if they can finish the year off with a Lory Cup, I mean, what a champagne finish to the year that would be. I'm going to go with Fermanagh. I think Fermanagh have, the talent, the Luca McCuskers and everything like that. Cian Darcy's going to be a big problem for them. They're going to have to figure out a way to try and stop him, like the form that he's in. It's going to be Cian Darcy versus Luca McCusker in many people's eyes. I'll go with Fermanagh.
I'm going to go for Fermanagh as well. And don't be surprised if Danny McHugh and Sean Corrigan step up to the play for Fermanagh as well. So that is all the hurling finals as well. And one more thing to get on to before we end the podcast, and it is Camogie. We'll start off with the games at Camogie. It is Antrim against Kilkenny in Corrigan Park, and this is Group 1. This is live on the official Camogie YouTube channel on Saturday at 2 p.m. The second game of Group 1 is Derry against Tipperary. This is in Dungiven at 2 p.m. on Saturday. And Waterford against Limerick. This game is on at Walsh Park at 2 p.m. on Saturday. So, to be honest with you, Seamus, the live game Antrim and Kilkenny, Antrim need to get a performance more than anything after losing to Derry last weekend. Derry against Tip should be interesting considering both sides won last weekend. Waterford and Limerick. Waterford lost last weekend to Tipperary. Limerick lost as well. So, both sides will be looking for a win there. So, how do you see the Group 1 games going this weekend?
Yeah, very, very interesting round in Group 1 of the Camogie Championship. Like, you've got Antrim against Kilkenny. I see nothing other than the Kilkenny winning that game, even though it's in Corrigan Park. Like, Kilkenny have done okay under Chap Clear, winning the Leinster Championship and everything like that, and they've started to turn it around slowly. Group 1, Round 2, Waterford versus Limerick. I see Waterford winning that game. I see them bouncing back from losing to Tipperary. Obviously, that would have hurt, given the two of the outsides of they are developing a tasty little rivalry there, given the fact that, you know, they are neck and neck. You know, like those are the sides that are trying to break the glass of Cork, Galway and Kilkenny. But Tipperary got the upper hand on them there, but I think Waterford will bounce back and beat Limerick, who were pretty abysmal against Kilkenny in round one. And then Derry Tipperary is really interesting because it's in Owen Beg. Derry really handled Antrim in round one. Tipperary, that will be a difficult away day for them, but given the form that they're in, given the fact that they're league champions, and given that they beat Waterford the last day out, I think Tipperary will win.
Yeah, I'd agree with all three predictions there. Waterford, Tipperary and Kilkenny to win those. Moving on to Group 2 this weekend. Wexford against Galway. That game is on in Belfield in Escarty at 2 p.m. on Saturday. Dublin against Clare. This game is on a cool mine at 4 p.m. on Saturday. Dublin against Clare, that is. And Down against Cork. This game is on a Park Esler at 1 p.m. on Saturday. So you would imagine Cork would beat Down. Wexford, Galway should be interesting considering Wexford are the home team. Galway did beat Dublin away from home. It's worth pointing out on match day 1. Dublin against Clare is an interesting one, actually, involving your own county, Seamus. That could be a tight one to go.
Definitely will be an interesting venue as well in St. Peregrine's. There'll be a very interesting game. St. Peregrine's obviously have the stand there and their main pitch. It's going to be a really interesting game. I actually back us to win that game against Clare, just given the form that we're in. We actually are in decent form. We gave Kilkenny a hard game in the Leinster final. We gave Galway a hard game in Parnell Park. I think that Clare, we actually will beat them in this game. Wexford against Galway is the one I'm the most interested in. I think Cork will beat Down without much fuss in Park Esler. But then Wexford against Galway, because Wexford have such flair and they have home advantage for this one in Macaulay Park. Galway have to go away. It'll be a very, very difficult one for Galway. And as I said, like, they're a team in transition. Like, it's not going to be an easy one by any stretch of the imagination. But I still would go with them to shade it. They shaded it in Parnell Park against Dublin. I think they'll shade this one too.
Yeah, I'll agree with you on two of those predictions. I'm going to go for Galway and Cork to win. And I think Dublin, I think you're being too hard on them. I think Dublin will beat Clare because Clare only got their first win of the season last week. Dublin have been in good form up until obviously losing to Galway last weekend, but obviously they lost to that because of a brilliant Niamh Mallon performance last week against Galway. So I'm not sure any Clare player will step up to the plate in this game. So I think Dublin will win that game, in all honesty. So that is all the games wrapped up. A full fixture list in football, obviously, in Camogie. And then you have the hurling finals as well. Hopefully everyone enjoys them at the weekend. Thanks to Seamus for coming on to the podcast. Subscribe, all that good stuff on the Gaelic Statsman. Thanks to Capture Athletics for sponsoring today's show. And until next week, lads, we'll see you then and take care.